Giant spiders are crawling out of the sewers and wiping out entire cities. In the small American town of Prosperity, Arizona, lives an eccentric guy named Harlan. He runs his own free radio station and constantly talks to his listeners about various conspiracy theories, predicting that aliens will soon arrive. Meanwhile, a truck belonging to the Venomous company is driving down the highway, carrying chemical barrels. The driver happens to be listening to Harlan's show. Suddenly, he spots a rabbit on the road. Trying not to hit it, he swerves sharply, causing one of the barrels to roll off the truck and tumble straight into a nearby pond. Some time later, a man named Joshua comes to that pond. He collects insects that have already absorbed the toxic water, planning to feed them to his spiders. A week later, a boy named Mike visits Joshua's exotic spider farm. He often stops by, fascinated by all the strange spiders there. Mike notices that one of the spiders has grown unusually large, and Joshua explains that the secret lies in the crickets from the pond. They turned out to be quite nutritious.
Whoa, he was hungry.
Joshua keeps talking about his pets and their habits, completely unaware that he's been feeding them poisoned insects. Then Mike suddenly remembers he's gotta run. He promises to come back in a week, and Joshua jokes that by then, the spiders will be twice as big. After the boy leaves, Joshua realizes one of his spiders is missing. He starts searching all over the farm, only to discover the spider has been sitting on his back the whole time. The creature crawls up to his neck and bites him. Screaming in pain, Joshua panics and knocks over all the terrariums. Hundreds of creepy spiders crawl out and swarm over him. A week later, Mike is on his way to visit Joshua again, but he runs into his mother, Samantha, the local sheriff, and her deputy, Pete. They're pulling a chemical barrel out of the water and explaining that the pond is now contaminated. Samantha tells Pete to send water samples to the lab, but Mike takes off toward Joshua's place to warn him about the danger. His mom stops him, reminding him that she forbade him from going to that spider farm because the spiders are dangerous, and they've been giving him nightmares. Samantha puts her son in the car, and they head home. On the way, she spots a few bikers speeding down the highway and decides to pull them over. Among them is her older daughter, Ashley, who begs her mom not to ticket her friends, but Samantha sends her straight to the car with Mike. That evening, Mike tries calling Joshua to make sure he's okay, but there's no answer. Joshua's entire farm is now covered in webbing, and giant, mutated spiders roam freely through the place. Later, a town meeting is held near the Prosperity Mall. The mayor announces that a company called Venomous wants to buy out the entire town, which is on the verge of bankruptcy, and cover moving expenses for all residents. But the townspeople are skeptical, believing the buyers are only after the mines beneath their homes. The mayor reminds everyone that ever since the death of McCormick, the owner of the mines, they haven't brought in any income. He suggests they take the chance to make some decent money by selling their property. One man speaks up, saying that shortly before his death, McCormick discovered a gold vein in the mines, but the mayor insists that was just a hallucination. At that moment, Chris McCormick, the miner's son, walks into the hall and says he believes his father and has no intention of selling the mines. The townspeople side with him, and Chris storms out of the meeting. The mayor tries to stop him and asks why he suddenly cares about the town's fate when he's been gone for 10 years and didn't even come to his father's funeral. Chris loses his temper and punches the mayor in the face. Samantha rushes to break up the fight and warns Chris to be careful. It turns out Chris used to be in love with Samantha, and before leaving town, he even beat up her husband for cheating on her. Gladys, Chris's aunt, notices he still has feelings for Samantha, and over breakfast she casually mentions that Samantha is divorced now, suggesting he should go talk to her. Meanwhile, spiders are escaping from Joshua's farm and crawling into the homes of Prosperity's residents. Shocked and terrified, Pete calls Samantha and tells her that something just ate his cat, dragging it straight through the wall. Samantha feels sorry for her assistant, but neither of them has any idea who, or what, could have done it. Seeing that his mom is busy talking, Mike decides it's the perfect time to go visit Joshua, but is disappointed to find his bike handcuffed to a pipe. A few minutes later, Chris pulls up to their house with a bouquet of flowers. Awkwardly, he asks Samantha out on a date and almost forgets to hand her the flowers. Meanwhile, Mike manages to sneak out of the house. He walks all the way to the farm, where he finds the place covered in webs and starts recording everything on video. Then he decides to check out the mine next to the farm, only to spot a giant spider inside. Luckily, he bolts before the creature notices him. Around the same time, Chris arrives at his late father's mine, where he's overseeing a group of gold diggers. He reminds them that the methane levels inside are dangerously high and that they must work with masks on at all times. On his way back, Mike spots Chris driving home and asks for a ride. He shows him a huge spider leg he found in the mine, explaining that the spiders have grown enormous and now live down there. Chris doesn't believe a word of it. He just laughs and says the spider leg looks more like a dried up cactus. Later, Mike sneaks back into the house through a window, but Samantha catches him. He tells her he was at Joshua's farm and that his spiders are now a danger to the whole town. Of course, his mom doesn't believe him. Seeing that there's a monster movie playing on TV, she assumes Mike just made it all up, and punishes him again. Meanwhile, one of the miners notices that a water hose is clogged. He decides to blow into it to clear it out, but then his face suddenly changes and frozen for a few seconds, the miner opens his mouth, and several spiders crawl out. A moment later, the Spider Queen herself, Consuela, drags him away into the darkness. The spiders also attack the mayor's ostrich farm. Hearing strange noises, the mayor goes to check on the birds, only to witness some of them being viciously torn apart by monstrous arachnids. Not long after, the free radio station reports a series of unexplained attacks on pets, and rumors begin to spread quickly among the townspeople. Meanwhile, Ashley is hanging out with her boyfriend Brett in his car, while his friends are riding motorcycles nearby. The couple starts making out, but Brett soon gets too pushy. Ashley tells him to stop several times, but he ignores her, so she stuns him with a taser her mom gave her for self-defense. Brett flies out of the car and actually pees his pants from the shock. Ashley takes the car and drives off, leaving him alone by the road. Moments later, Brett notices giant spiders crawling toward him and runs to warn his friends, but they just laugh at him for his soaked jeans. That's when the spiders finally reach the group of careless bikers. The bikers try to escape, but the spiders are way faster and more agile. One by one, the monsters catch up and attack each of them. Only Brett manages to get away. He speeds across the road right in front of a fuel truck, and the spiders chasing him slam into it. The driver loses control and crashes into a power pole, causing a massive explosion that wipes out the spiders. Brett cheers, thinking he's finally beaten them and that the danger's over. But then, out of the flames, the spiders emerge completely unharmed and keep coming after him. He runs for his life and hides inside a nearby mine. The entrance collapses behind him, blocking the spiders from getting in. But deep inside, Brett discovers new monsters, and the bodies of their victims, wrapped tightly in cocoons. Meanwhile, Chris's Aunt Gladys is still listening to free radio. Suddenly, her dog hears something strange coming from the basement. The animal runs down the stairs and starts barking at a huge hole in the wall, one that the spiders had dug themselves. Within seconds, a massive spider bursts out of the hole and drags the poor dog away. Moments later, Gladys, who was just about to feed her pet, realizes it's gone. She carefully goes down to the basement and is horrified to see the gaping hole leading straight into the mines. She steps closer and finds her dog's collar on the ground. Worried and trembling, she decides to go into the tunnel to look for him. But before she can take another step, a giant spider attacks and wraps her in a cocoon. At the same time, Chris returns home. Hearing Gladys's terrified screams coming from the basement, he rushes downstairs and finds a massive spider leg lying near the mine entrance. Realizing that Mike was right, and that it definitely wasn't a cactus, Chris bolts out of the mine in shock. A little later, Chris drives to Samantha's house and shows Mike the fragment of the spider leg. Using a special computer program, Mike calculates the size of the creature it must have belonged to. Samantha watches their conversation in disbelief, convinced they've both lost it. But Chris insists that the giant spiders are real, and that they've killed his Aunt Gladys. Mike, however, thinks she might still be alive. If a male spider attacked her, he says, it probably just wrapped her up in webs to bring her to the female as a gift. Meanwhile, Ashley steps out of the shower and angrily rips up photos of herself and Brett. Suddenly, another monstrous spider crawls into her room through the window. Ashley notices it too late, and the creature immediately pins her to the wall with its web. She struggles to reach her taser to fight it off, but can't. Luckily, her screams are heard by Chris, Mike, and Samantha, who rush in to help. Chris grabs a chair and a pair of scissors, trying to fend the creature off, but the spider overpowers him and wraps him in silk too. Thankfully, Samantha manages to grab a shotgun in time and fires several shots, finally bringing the monster down.
Hey, Spidey!
Then Samantha contacts Pete over the radio since all phone lines in town are down. She tells him to gather every weapon he can find and drive to her place. Pete doesn't understand why she needs weapons, but Samantha orders him to just follow her instructions. Meanwhile, the spiders are moving closer to the town center. They attack a group of men at a barbershop and then start chasing Pete's car as he drives toward Samantha with the weapons. While waiting for Pete, Mike explains that there were about 200 spiders on Joshua's farm and that they're all nocturnal hunters. They realize they need to warn the townspeople. Samantha points out that the phones are dead, but then they notice the radio. Mike suggests using it to broadcast a warning, but Ashley thinks nobody will believe Harlan anyway. Soon Pete pulls up to the house, and his car is immediately surrounded by spiders. Chris, Samantha, and the kids hear him arrive and rush outside, shooting at the spiders as they make their way to the car. They all eventually reach Harlan's trailer, where Samantha makes an official announcement to the townspeople about the giant spider invasion, urging everyone to arm themselves. But no one believes her, dismissing it as another one of Harlan's crazy stories. Meanwhile, Mike, Ashley, and Pete, who stayed in the car outside, notice a massive tarantula heading toward the trailer. Mike radios his mom to warn her and tells everyone to stay quiet, but the tarantula attacks anyway. Samantha then decides to gather everyone at the Prosperity Mall. Chris asks why that place, and Samantha explains that it has steel doors and concrete walls. At that moment, the tarantula begins flipping over the trailer, and the sounds broadcast over the radio finally convince everyone that the town is in real danger. Samantha, Chris, and Harlan manage to escape the trailer and jump into Pete's car, but the spiders keep chasing them. Soon, dozens of the creatures reach the town center, throwing everything into chaos. The spiders overrun street after street, destroying everything and everyone in their path. All the survivors, including the mayor, rush to the mall for safety. Samantha keeps shooting until the last second but manages to slip inside just before the main gates close. Inside, the crowd demands an explanation for what's going on. Harlan insists the spiders are aliens and says he warned everyone before, but nobody still believes him. Mike covers for them, explaining that the spiders are drawn to vibrations, so everyone needs to stay as quiet and still as possible. The mayor asks why Samantha didn't call the military, and she reminds him that there's no phone service in town. The mayor suggests using a cell phone, but to get any signal, someone would have to climb to the roof. Chris and Harlan head up to try catching a signal while Samantha gives orders to the townspeople, telling them to use whatever they can find as weapons. Then Samantha goes to join them, but just before they reach the roof, Mike runs up holding a bunch of perfume bottles. He explains that it might throw the spiders off because they have a super sensitive sense of smell. Meanwhile, along with hundreds of smaller spiders, the massive Queen Consuela approaches the mall, ready to break through the main entrance. Soon the spiders even make it onto the roof, where Chris manages to call 911. He yells that their town is being overrun by giant spiders, but the dispatcher doesn't believe him, and hangs up.
They're here! You're damn right! That's what I've been telling you!
Consuela keeps ramming the gates, trying to break through, while Samantha orders Ashley to take all the injured people and children down into the tunnels beneath the mall, unaware that the tunnels are already crawling with spiders. Meanwhile, Samantha and the other armed townspeople prepare to face Consuela head-on. But instead of entering herself, the giant spider peers inside and lets hundreds of smaller spiders pour in, much harder to kill and even faster. Samantha and the others retreat toward the basement, firing as they go, but the spiders keep coming. Pete decides to stay on the first floor to distract the creatures and give everyone else a chance to escape into the tunnels. By some miracle, Pete survives and makes it outside, where he runs into Harlan, who also decided to draw the spiders' attention away to give Chris time to get out. Meanwhile, Brett, still wandering through the tunnels, runs into the mayor, who got down there before the others. Brett tells him that giant spiders are chasing him, moments before one of them grabs the mayor. On her way to the basement, Samantha meets Chris, who climbed down from the roof through the ventilation shaft, and they join the others. They find the tunnel door locked from the outside, until Brett suddenly breaks it open. Several spiders follow right behind him, but the survivors manage to gun them down before everyone rushes into the tunnels. Deeper inside, they notice a strange smell. Chris realizes it's methane gas and warns that even a small spark could blow the whole place up. He urges everyone to be extremely careful. Soon one of the survivors is attacked by spiders, and the group gets ready to shoot, but Chris reminds them they can't fire. So Samantha takes out the creatures with her crossbow instead. Then the group finds themselves surrounded by dozens of cocoons with victims trapped inside, and in one of them, they discover the mayor is still alive. Chris realizes his Aunt Gladys might also still be alive and decides to go search for her. But before that, Chris finally confesses his feelings to Samantha, then asks the others to start the generators to restore power to the mines and blow them up along with the spiders. While the survivors make their way toward the exit, Chris inspects the cocoons. In one of them, he actually finds Gladys alive, and then, by pure chance, he discovers the gold vein his father once told him about. Just then, Consuela appears in their path. Chris aims his gun at her but remembers he can't shoot because of the methane gas, so he decides to use the perfume Mike brought instead. It works. The scent disorients the giant spider for a moment. Chris and Gladys manage to escape on Brett's motorcycle, and along the way, Chris slips a few matches into a light bulb. Meanwhile, Samantha and the others find the generator, and Ashley's stun gun helps them get it started. As soon as Samantha turns it on, massive explosions ripple through the tunnels, wiping out the giant spiders, including Consuela. Luckily, Chris and Gladys make it out of the mine just in time, unharmed. Once it's all over, rescue teams arrive with Pete and Harlan, who were the ones that called them. Harlan still insists the spiders were aliens, and the rescuers can't wait to see them for themselves. Not long after those incredible events, Harlan tells his listeners the whole story about the spider invasion, sticking to his alien theory, and adds that Chris is now putting together a new team of gold prospectors, convinced that there really is gold hidden in the mines. So, how would you take on giant spiders? Drop your ideas in the comments down below, smash that like button, and make sure to subscribe for more. See you in the next video.